Hello, I'm Gareth, and I'm here to help Fumi. Have you ever had a situation where you were not sure how to say a word correctly? Did you worry about how to pronounce a word? Why is pronunciation important anyway? Well, knowing how to say words correctly helps communicate your message. When we speak, it is important that we not only choose our words wisely, but we also use the appropriate pronunciation. Fumi wants to know how to explain the patient's events to her supervisor, but she does not know if she's saying the words correctly. If you remember from the video earlier, Fumi asked the patient to explain how they were hurt. The patient used several verbs to describe their accident. Do you remember all the verbs they used? Let's review and listen to the pronunciations of each. Walked, started, slipped, moved, jumped, climbed, rolled, landed, and waited. Notice that each of the words ends in the final ed, but the verbs do not all have the same sound at the end. Listen to the words again. Walked, started, slipped, moved, jumped, climbed, rolled, landed, and waited. Fumi also wondered why the words sound differently. In English, regular past tense verbs have an ed added to the verb. For example, the present tense verb talk gets ed added to become talked. Here's another example. Erase becomes erased once you add ed. Need another example? Okay, let's see one more. The word turn is the present tense form. Add ed and it changes into turned in the past tense form. Now let's talk about the pronunciation rules. There are 3 rules to determine the past tense pronunciation of regular verbs. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to grab paper and a pencil to write these rules down. These are the 3 rules. Rule number 1 is all regular verbs that end in d or t sound have a did or tud final sound. For example, the verb fold has a final d sound. Once you add ed, the past tense pronunciation is folded. You still spell the verb as folded, but you say it as folded. Here's another example, but this one ends in a final t sound. The regular present tense verb is taste. The word ends in a final e, but notice that the final sound is t in taste. Taste. The rule is that if the verb has a final d or t sound, you add the t sound. This means that taste becomes tasted. Let's move on to rule number 2. Rule number 2 is that all voiced final sounds end in the d sound. First, we need to consider what all the voiced sounds are. These are A, E, G, I, J, L, M, N, O, U, V, W, Y, Z. The good thing is that you don't need to memorize these letters or sounds to know what they are voiced letter sounds. There's an easier way of knowing if a verb ends in a voiced sound. You will need to use your hand and place it on your throat. Next, say the verb slowly and pay attention to the final sound of the verb. Let's use one of our previous words, turn. Turn has the final n sound, but I just finished explaining that you can use your hand. Let me model how to do this trick. Again, place your hand on your throat. Then say the word turn. Turn, turn, Notice that you feel a vibration on the final n sound. That means that it is a voice sound. So you would say turned, not turned. Turned. The third and final rule is coming up. Rule number 3. Verbs with an unvoiced final sound are pronounced with a t sound. We need to first identify the unvoiced sounds. The unvoiced sounds are B, C, F, H, K, P, Q, X. The great news is that we can use our hand to determine the final sound as well. Let's practice with the word erase. Let's say this word slowly. erase. Now let's say it again, slowly, and place our hand on our throat. Erase, erase, erase. Do you feel anything? Any vibration? Let's check again. Erase. No, right? This means that the final sound is unvoiced. So we say erased, erased. Let's check back with Fumi. She had recorded the events of her patient. The patient shared the following words: walked, started, slipped, moved, jumped, climbed, rolled, landed, and waited. I want to practice the first 3 words and use the rules we learned. Let's begin with walk. What sound does walk end with? My first thought would be, does it end in a final d or t sound? No. Okay, so it's not rule number 1 then. Does it end in a final voiced sound? I don't know. I need to use the hand test to find out. Walk, walk. I don't feel any vibration. Does that mean it's voiced or unvoiced? Correct, it's unvoiced. That tells me that it uses rule number 3. We say walked. Yes. Let's try the second word, start. Is it rule number 1, 2, or 3? I'm going to ask myself, does it have a final d or t sound? Yes, it does. No need to do the hand test here because I automatically know I say started. Now, one more word left, slip. We'll use the same process as before. Is it rule number 1, 2, or 3? I'm going to ask myself, does it have a final d or t sound? No, it doesn't. So I know we don't say slipped. Now I'm going to check to see if it has a final voiced or unvoiced sound. Using my hand, I'll say the word again. Slip. Nope, no vibration. It has a final unvoiced sound and I say slipped. You're getting it! Good for you! For this next part, we're going to help Fumi figure out how to say the remaining words the patient used. We did the first 3 words. Now you do the remaining verbs. Moved, jumped, climbed, rolled, landed, and waited. Use your notes and the 3 rules. We will determine how each of these words in present tense forms are pronounced. When we do this, we will identify the appropriate ed sound and add the rule that applies to that sound. Begin by identifying if rule number 1 applies. Does the verb end in a final d or t sound? Remember, we don't use our hand for this rule. If so, we use the tid or did ending at the end of the verb. If not, we move on to the next rules. Go through the remaining verbs and find the ones that have the final d or t sound. Pause the video to allow time to work. Click unpause after you have found them. Welcome back. Let's review to see if you were able to find all the verbs that rule number 1 applies. What is rule number 1 again? That's right, it has the final d or t sound. Okay, let's see which words you identified. Did you select landed and waited? That's correct! Landed and waited. Awesome! Now we are left with 4 verbs left. Moved, jumped, climbed, and rolled. Let's use rule number 2 and find out if any of these words use this rule. What does this rule represent? We can check our notes. That's what notes are for, right? My notes say that rule number 2 is for voice sounds and it makes verbs end with a d sound. So let's look at the remaining list of words again and determine which ones have voiced endings. Moved, jumped, climbed, rolled. Remember to use your notes and your hand to identify the ending sounds of the present tense form of the verb. Pause the video to get some quiet time and unpause when you are ready to check your answers. Welcome back. let's see which verbs you identified as having voiced ending sounds. Did you select moved, climbed, and rolled? Perfect! Let's make sure of our answers. First, we'll use the present tense form of the verb for each move, climb, and roll. We'll take each word, one at a time, and check if they have the voiced ending sound. Move, move, move. My notes indicate that the final V sound is voiced. Let me check with my hand to be sure. Move. Yes, it's voiced because I feel a vibration. So move would be pronounced in past tense as moved, moved, moved. Yes, correct. Now let's see about climb. Climb, climb. The last letter is B, but the last sound is The rule says that the last sound and not the last letter, so this one is a tricky one. My hand feels a vibration. Climb. So yes, it is voiced. Plus, my notes indicate that the M sound is voiced. Do you want to practice saying this one? It's climbed. Climbed. Good job. Okay, we're down to the last verb. Roll. 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 What do you think? The notes say that the L sound is voiced. Let's do the hand test and say the word one more time. Roll. It is voiced. This means that the correct pronunciation is rolled. There's one verb left from the original list, jumped. We know it isn't the tud or dud sound because jump doesn't have a final T or D sound. Let's see if the final sound is voiced or unvoiced by doing the hand test. Jump, jump, p, p. Do you feel anything? Nope, I don't either. Let's check our notes. The notes say that the p sound is also unvoiced. This means that we pronounce it as jumped. Jumped. I think you understand now. With a little more practice, you will know the rules better and improve on your pronunciation. Let's go to the next section to practice some more, and remember, use your notes.